All right, welcome back. We have been taking this journey. Thank you for taking this journey with us out of darkness into light. And it's a journey for all of us. This isn't us up here telling you what to do. This isn't us projecting anything onto you. This is the journey of every single person's life, out of darkness into the glory of a Son of God. Last session, we talked about sexual sin. And my question for Jeff for this one is going to be, where did that sexual sin ultimately lead to in your life? Because a lot of times sin it's not self-contained, it's not siloed, but your sexual sin led to something else really massive in your life. What was that for you?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, again for the opportunity. You know, man, my sexual impropriety, if we will, started at the age of 11. With me witnessing hardcore pornography at a friend's house. And that affected every relationship that I had with a woman up through and including my current beautiful wife, whom I love dearly. But that sexual depravity can cause us to do things that are unthinkable, Mark. And for me, that occurred after a phone call in July of 1987. My girlfriend at the time called me up. And I answered, and it was, I think, the third week of July of 1987. And she said, "Jeff, we have a problem." And I said to her, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "A problem? What kind of problem do we have?" And she said, "I'm pregnant." And I tell you, gentlemen, I can't tell you the emotions that were running through my heart at the time. I thought that my football career would be ruined. I thought that, wasn't my girlfriend wasn't she on the pill? Should I have used protection? All of these things come racing through my mind and heart at the time. And what I told her, Mark, is I'd call her back 24 hours later. And I don't remember praying about it, gentlemen. Don't remember consulting God or consulting a good friend. All I remember is calling her up the next day and saying, "I'm not ready to be a father. We need to have an abortion." And and we'll get into the specifics of what happened thereafter. But, gentlemen, I thought at that point in time that I was taking a problem and, if you will, turning the chapter, closing the chapter, okay? And little did I know that I was making a decision that would impact me every single day for the rest of my life. 35 years later, here I am today, and tears still roll down my eyes as I think of aborting my son, who now I have a relationship with. He's in heaven. And Jonathan, Andrew, Joe Quinn, and I, we converse as often as possible. But at the age of 17 years old, I decided that killing my unborn child was going to set me free from the captivity of parenthood, when in reality all it did is set me free from my innocence.
At what point did you name your son?
Yeah, Mark, the process from that phone call, we got the abortion. A couple weeks later, I borrowed $200 from a friend to pay an innocent stranger to kill my unborn child a couple weeks later. And then I went off to college, and I kind of tried to separate myself from that issue. But as I got older in my, probably my early to mid 30s, I did a general confession and prepared for several months for that general confession. And that was really the first time that the true impact of that decision that I had made 15 to 20 years before, came to being. So it was that general confession that I did, and God's forgiveness from that sin of killing my unborn child, that precipitated me to develop a relationship with him. That was part of the process. The first part of the process was to reconcile with God through the sacrament of reconciliation. The next step in my healing process was to engage my beautiful wife at the time about the decision that I had made previously. And that was important for me, man. It helped me. I had my partner in life at the time, my wife, when we had a child at the age of 4 at that point in time, was now able to help me through my woundedness of that poor decision that I had made. But soon thereafter, after getting my wife to help me, is when, my spiritual director at the time recommended that I name my son. And I will never forget this day, because after he suggested I name my son, I thought that was a very unusual request. But, at that point in time in my life, I was developing a relationship with God. So I sat in front of the tabernacle and I said, God, thank you for forgiving me for killing my son. I said, thank you for being such a merciful God that you would bless me with a child, even beyond that, with my beautiful wife. I said, but I don't know how to have a relationship with my son. I assume he's in heaven, but I want to have a relationship with him. And I said, can you help me? And after about 10 or 15 minutes of sitting there praying in front of the tabernacle, he introduced me to my son. And I got to name my son Jonathan Andrew Joquin. And now I have a relationship with him. I pray to him every day. I ask him to pray for me. And that doesn't mean that the pain goes away. That doesn't mean that I'm eternally sorry for taking his life. But it's this God that's so full of mercy. It's all that he is, if anything else is mercy. And he can allow me the opportunity of having a relationship with my son after I took his life so many years before. So man, it doesn't give me any great joy to sit in front of this camera right now and cry. I'm not embarrassed by it at all, I promise you, because it's the grace of Jesus Christ that has saved me. It's the grace of Jesus Christ that has given me a relationship with my son. And dare I say, you, sir, watching this right now, if you too have had an abortion in your past, whether it's 20, 30, or 40 years ago, seek the reconciliation of the God of the universe. Develop a relationship with your son and daughter. Do not allow the darkness, do not allow the enemy to tell you that you are not worthy because you took the life of your unborn child. Do not tell him that your child does not live in heaven as we speak, but run towards the mercy and the grace of God and let him forgive you. Let him heal you from that wound. I come before you today sharing that story because I still too need to be healed from that pain. But I know that by the blood of Christ, I've been saved by his blood, and I have been set free and forgiven because I asked for his mercy. So if you share this grievous sin as I do, run to God for forgiveness. Run to him for mercy and develop a relationship with your unborn child.
Jeff, it's so profoundly powerful. And one thing I know you've done, because you shared in the That Man Is You presentation, that you wrote a letter to your son Jonathan. I'm not sure I've ever cried that much in my life as when you read that letter. Um, but there's something real and authentic and raw about what you're saying, and experience this freedom, experience this mercy of God, and yet even in the midst of that, you still have pain today.
Mm-hmm.
You still have regret today. Um, we were talking earlier about, when you drive by and you see a father and a son, playing catch in their yard, and you have a beautiful daughter, Faith, but that's what does that feel like?
Yeah, and forgive me, gentlemen, for the emotion. I'm doing everything I can to get the message across through the emotion. But for you young men watching out there right now who are contemplating an abortion, for you young men out there who have had an abortion, just run to his mercy, okay? It breaks my heart every time I go by a baseball field, Mark. Every time I look out the back window and I see my neighbor playing catch or playing soccer with his son, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But it also gives me great joy because I know that I serve a God who is nothing but mercy. And he wants to give me that joy. I have that relationship with my son right now. I can't wrap my arms around him. I can't tell him in person how much I love him. But I know one day, when I finally get out of purgatory and get into heaven, that I will be able to give him a hug and to hear the words, "Dad, I love you." And that is why I do what I am doing right now. Because I don't want you out there to suffer the same way that I've had to suffer for decades. I suffered. Understand that today you can be set free from the captivity, the prison that the enemy has put you in. And all you have to do is ask for God's mercy so that one day you can hear your son or your daughter tell you how much they love you. So it breaks my heart, Mark, every time I see a father playing catch with his son.
Jeff, the crazy thing, and we were just speaking about this at lunch, but I knew you for over a decade and had no idea this side of your life and this side of your story. And I just knew the Jeff Joquin who knew every verse in the Bible and was bringing so many TMIY parishes. I mean, Jeff has probably single-handedly, with God's grace, started 40, 50 parishes in the Florida area with that man as you, and just spread this men's ministry all over the land. And I never knew the pain you were going through. And I think that's one of the reasons when you read that letter to your son, it's just, it's a feeling I can't even describe. And my pain, it's for you, like, you can just see so clearly, like, it makes me like really mad at the devil, like, not trying to be, but like angry, like this, we're talking about this innocence of an 11-year-old, right? Is when it starts. It's like, it's not fair. right? He starts a fight that's not fair. And you're 52 years old and the pain is fresh. It's forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that. And God's using it for good. But it's just, you can see, the goodness and the beauty of God, and you have goodness and beauty of God all throughout your life. But this time is a time of painful one. And that decision that took place, you can't take it back. And I also think there's this incredible parallel, if you will, between your conversion, part of your conversion with that man is you, and this story in particular, because it's a little bit different, but the King David story is the same story. Mm-hmm. That the King David story starts with adultery in his heart, right? He's looking after a woman and he lusts for her. Mm. He calls for her, he sleeps with her, she gets pregnant. His sexual sin leads to pregnancy, which then leads to death, right? And he has Uriah, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but he has Uriah killed. So his sexual sin, adultery, led to accomplice to murder. And it's always been that way. Back even in the Old Testament, where they're sacrificing to the gods of promiscuity and fertility in order to satisfy their sexual desires. And I just think that we're hitting on something that's, and what would you say to the person who thinks this is only a woman's issue?
Yeah. We're going to rename this session, guys, Two Guys Crying. Listen.
We did better than I thought we would, actually.
It was hard forgive me for the emotion, guys. But again, if you take anything from this talk, let it be this. If you've made a decision that you regret, allow the God of the universe to enter that great light, to enter into your darkness and set you free. This pain I kept inside of me for 30 years. I don't want you to keep this pain inside of you for 30 years. I've been to conferences and I've told the story about abortion. I've had men in their mid to late 60s that I've never met before in my life come up to me and say that they're going to get confession that day for an abortion. I think the longest one was 42 years prior.
Thank goodness.
So see through the tears, gentlemen. See to God's mercy. See to his forgiveness. Develop a relationship with your child that you cannot wrap your arms around. And may he set you free from your captivity. I don't want to see you go through the pain that I've gone through for the last 30 years of my life. So that's the purpose of Tears Shed.
I understand there's a lot of resources out there for women on this topic, but what about for men? Are men struggling with this issue?
Yeah. Mark, great question. In I think the first time I gave the talk in public about the abortion story was in the end of 2019, and it was at a men's conference. And since then, I've been blessed to give that same talk to the Diocesan Pro-Life Gala in the Diocese of St. Petersburg. And at that event, I told this story, and the bishop of our diocese, Bishop Gregory Parks, came up to me after and challenged me to share this story with as many men as I possibly could, the abortion story, to get the healing, because I believe he knew how much healing and impact was necessary in that regard. And subsequent to that, I've told the abortion story in front of the White House. I've told it on EWTN. I've told it on Sirius XM, the Catholic channel. And to lead into the answer to your question, we've done 2 conferences with a ministry called Support After Abortion. We did one in October of last year, and we did one just recently, a month ago, that you were involved with. And it's this organization, Support After Abortion, that's really moving mountains in the way of abortion healing. And recovery. Okay. So what they've done a lot of marketing and research nationwide, and their marketing and research has told them that roughly 22 million men suffer from the issue of abortion, the impact of abortion. And so this particular organization is, not only are they having conferences, but if you need help and clinical help, to speak with a clinician, to speak with an expert, you can go to supportafterabortion.com, I believe. Google it online. They're available, and they have all kinds of resources from men who've given testimonies, but not just testimonies, actual physical help that can be provided through counselors and follow-up programs that they offer. So it's a Support After Abortion. It's an organization that I've worked with for the last 2 years, and tremendous help for not just women. See, they started a few years ago with just women, but in the last year or so, they brought on the component for men, and it's really blossomed into the 2 worldwide conferences that I just mentioned. So
yeah, beautiful. So I want to close with this. Back to our 7 steps. Step number 6: find God in others. And how does that relate? Jesus Christ says, "What you do for the least of my people, you do unto me." And Mother Teresa made it so clear. The least of our people are the unborn in the womb. And so this topic is near and dear to so many. We know that. But there's so many out there hurting from it, who need healing. And just this continual theme we want to bring to you, as crazy as it might sound, this is why Christ came into the world, to break into the deepest, darkest corners of your life and set you free. And he really desires freedom for you. He desires your joy. He desires your happiness. He desires to set you free from the depths of your sinfulness. And so in that, when we hand these things over to the Lord in this crazy kind of but beautiful way, I think St. John Vianney says this: give God the joy of being your Savior. This is why he came. And so the Lord desires to heal you, and he just wants you to ask, and ask every single day. Thank you. We'll see you next time.